Hello everyone, I'm Hannah Lloyd.
And I'm Charlotte Gilfillan.
Welcome to our podcast, Women in Wellies.
Each episode we will be inviting a guest to share their stories, experiences and lessons of working and living in rural Scotland.
We want to get to know the real women behind the Wellies and share them with you, our listeners.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Women in Wellies podcast, and today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing our guest Linda Tinson. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Charlotte. How are you?
Very well indeed, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Linda, what we like to do at the start of each podcast episode is just ask our guests to introduce themselves. So tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Linda Tinson was Harley, so farming family, farmer's daughter, married for a long time now, 3 daughters, all grown up, and the apple of my eye, obviously. I am also a rural lawyer, head of rural business now at Burness Paull, based in Edinburgh, but all over the country.
And you grew up on a farm, didn't you?
Yeah, mixed farm in West Fife. We don't call it West Fife, we call it overlooking the M90 because it's a bit warmer down this side than some bits of West Fife. But we had grew up working farm, arable and cattle mainly. I think we had sheep at some point, but they went quite quickly. Considered myself a bit of an urban cowgirl. We used to drive cattle down the high street of Inverkeithing between land holdings and on our ponies, and generally we're fairly feral.
That sounds like a pretty idyllic childhood, Linda.
Well, it was a lot of fun.
What inspired your move into rural law?
Well, we'd been away living in England. We'd come back up to Scotland living in Angus. I had got to the stage where I'd had 10 years out with 3 children in 3.5 years. There's not a lot of option to do anything else. And we had moved to rural Angus. I had decided that wife and mother was fine, but it wasn't enough, and we would I'd get a job. So I trotted off to a job agency 2005, and they had 2 jobs on offer for me that day, one in residential and general conveyancing, and one was in agricultural law with Hamish Lean in Forfar. And I decided that would be my route because that's where I came from, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. Agricultural Holdings 2003 Act had not long come in. There was a lot happening in the sector, and it was really, I thought, I think I'll do this. This looks fun. And it was. So here we are.
Yeah. What was it like being a woman at that time, moving into the rural law sector?
Well, there were good representation of very, very clever women, in among the rural law community, and they're still around, a lot of them. But I would say the wider rural community was definitely a lot less. Women in agriculture has really made a big difference, I would say. The succession was still very male dominated, and walking into a room at a NFU or a SLE or whatever event, you would largely find men over 50, white Anglo-Saxon males. And I think the demographic has changed probably a fair bit since then.
So your 3 daughters, are they all rural based?
Well, the eldest is slightly, in the sense that she works at Retty & Co. and does country houses. The other 2 are currently living in London. One's about to move to Switzerland, but they were all raised on ponies, basically, and as such still have that grounding. They're not agricultural because we were not farmers. My brothers were farmers, but we were not. I won't say why, but that was the way of it back in the 70s and 80s. Girls were educated and boys were farmers, so as a result, we actually moved back to our family farm in I think 2009, and lived next door to my parents. So we had the lovely benefit of being on farm without farming. So the girls did have that outdoor upbringing.
Again, sounds like a pretty idyllic childhood.
Yeah, they did. They had a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
You've just recently taken up another position, haven't you, with Royal Highland Show?
Yeah, I was extremely honoured. I have to say, it was a weeping moment when I got called to say, would I be a vice president of the Highland Show? My mother would have been beside herself with excitement, and my dad was pretty emotional. We've always been very. We went to so many shows growing up. We showed ponies. We Before that, my father show jumped horses with his brother. My grandparents showed Clydesdales. It goes way back. So for us, it was very. We have always grown up with the Highland Show as a main thing in our summer. That was it. I think I've missed it once when I was actually giving birth to my youngest. So for me to be asked to do that, it was a phenomenal honor. So I'm really really excited about the show this year.
I know. I mean, it's going to be even bigger and better this year, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. And we're working with some fantastic, amazing initiatives in our presidential marquee. We've got some fantastic science on show. It's called the Science of Food and Drink, our initiative. And as part of that, we've got some amazing exhibits coming and some really energetic people who are innovating in a way that is really great to see.
What a fantastic opportunity to showcase something like that as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think the presidential team have come together and we've all got different skill sets, but we've really been putting a lot of effort in. So hopefully it pays off. Hopefully it pays off.
Yeah, I'm sure it will do.
I think everyone will have seen flock to the show in celebration of the golden shears, and that's a presidential initiative as well, isn't it?
Not as such, I don't think. I think they're doing that separately. It's the World Championship shearing. So we have got a sheep. The Presidential Initiative have got a sheep. Burness Paull have got a sheep. Um, and we're having them, hopefully, they're flocking back to our presidential marquee to stand on the lawn outside it. We're still negotiating that with the Highland Show as to the location of our sheeps. But our sheeps are hopefully going to be in front of our tent. And hopefully, the Taylor Crisps sheeps will also be in front of our tent. So we'll have a nice little flock.
So, Linda, we've talked a bit about kind of who you are and what you do, but I think we all do what we do because of things that inspire us. So can you tell us a little bit about what inspires you to do what you do?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about succession. I'm very passionate about the next generation. I'm very passionate about the fact that for generations, uh, there have been issues around succession in farming. It is just the way it is. Any family business, and in fact, if you watch Succession on TV, you will see it's every business, small, large, medium-sized, rural, urban. It is just an issue. It's human nature. It's the Lion King. The old man doesn't want to go. It it is just human nature. So it's fascinating, and the psychology of it is fascinating. And walking into a room with a family, that's why we go out in the field quite a lot. You garner more from walking into a room of people at their home than you can ever do in a professional office. You immediately pick up body language. I think we were doing a survey not a survey, a course the other day about, the percentage of communication that is body language, the percentage of communication that is unspoken. And it's something like 93%. So it is amazing how much you can go on. And that's my passion, to try and help people in situations where otherwise, very inadvertently often, things can happen. My mum was one of 8 children. Her family did have bad feeling and fallouts. She was passionate that even if we all hated each other professionally, we would all have Christmas together, and that's the goal of every family.
Yeah, and I think it's what comes through for me, Linda, is it's about people. It's a passion for kind of people getting a solution that's workable for them in their family life, that facilitates business growth, that allows kind of farming to go on.
I like to think that we try and seek solutions, not problems. And as a lawyer, we all are trained to see the problems, and we're all trained to look for the faults, and we're all trained to critique. But if you can do that with the vision of what you're trying to achieve, then that hopefully helps. But if you don't have the vision of what you're trying to achieve, you get lost in the detail quite a lot. So and people hyper focus on certain issues. You will find that sometimes there's a row. You get to the very end of a settlement with people, and it could fall apart for the sake of a gate, and that's human nature. It's very interesting, and no two families, no two situations are the same. It is very interesting. It's a great job,
and all about people, which is what Charlotte and I both like people too. So they're a common theme here.
A lot of our listeners will probably know you in a professional context, but we do like to get a bit of an insight into the woman behind the Wellies on the podcast. Now, you've had a really kind of diverse background, some really interesting experiences and things. One of the things that I'd love to know a bit more about is that you've played sport at an international level. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Well, it's a bit of it's lacrosse. And as my husband says, that's not a real sport. People don't really play it, but they do. And I did. And I played for Scottish schools, and then I played Scottish universities. Then I played, and I was actually in the A squad, but I played in the B team. But I played against Wales, I played against England, played against, I can't remember, somewhere else. Was it Holland or somewhere came over? So but it was great fun. I was captain of the university team, and we sport was really important to me. I love it. I was also brought up riding ponies. We were in my kids were in the Scottish working hunter teams. We have, I am very, at heart, don't look at now, sporty person.
I'm assuming the lacrosse is where you had your teeth knocked out, or was that a different time?
No, that was actually hockey. I was playing hockey at school, and it was a frosty day. Nowadays, you wouldn't play in frosty days on grass. And of course, no one had mouth guards in those days. And Hannah will know where it was, side pitch at St George's. And the ball just came straight up, whacked me in the teeth, and I spat my teeth out in a sort of cartoon character manner.
You're reminding me, Linda, why I didn't ever play hockey.
Yeah, the sad thing is I went on and had them fixed. It took a long time, had them fixed, and went on and kept playing hockey, and got a mouth guard at that point. As Mum said, my caps were too expensive to get broken.
Yeah, definitely. And you've worked in some different places around the world as well, Linda, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a spell in Hong Kong when I qualified. I actually went on a round the world ticket to travel, and arrived in Hong Kong to visit friends, and thought I'd be a nanny or a secretary or something. I didn't really want to do anything serious. And then my friend pointed out to me that lawyers get paid tons in Hong Kong, and why don't you just be one? So I went to the recruitment agent and got a job pretty quickly, and stayed out there for about 8-9 months, something like that, and did an in-house job for an accountancy firm.
Fantastic. What was that experience like then, being out there?
Oh, it's great fun. I actually shared a flat with Doug McAdam, ex CEO of Scottish Land Estates. I won't tell the stories. But we had a lot of fun. It was a great place to be at the time.
I think you were a tatty inspector at one stage as well.
I am very proud of my tatty inspector qualification. I put it on my CV religiously. I was a tatty inspector back in the day, and it was a great job. You could work all summer for 4 or 5 weeks, earn enough money to go off and have a grand old time. So it was a great job. Worked in Angus and still have lots of connections up in Angus from doing my tatty inspecting. And to this day, I will walk onto a farm and they'll go, "Oh, you came here and inspected tatties in 1986 or whatever." And yeah.
This kind of wealth of experience and diversity of experience will no doubt really kind of help on the rural law side, connecting with clients, being able to understand their position, their situations, being able to advise them.
Yeah, it's. I think in any professional advisor job, it's a bit like you look at politicians now and you think, well, they've done nothing but be a politician. I think in any job, any profession, the more richer experiences that you can bring to the table, the better. If you can take, and I suppose it's the old-fashioned sort of word of wisdom. It does come with age or experience, one of the two. And I think, whilst you don't want to be a fuddy-duddy old person and sort of go, well, it was like that back in the day, so it must be like that now, you can hopefully derive experiences that you can apply. For example, my husband was a housemaster at Fetty's and I was a resident matron, and we had 60 boys in the boarding house and we had 3 children under 3.5 at the time. We learned people skills there extremely fast, and you still can use that in your everyday life because you see people under stress. Parents of children are the most stressed people on the planet because you can't control your children, but you want to, and you want them to do the best. And my husband's a teacher. One of my daughters is a teacher. That is the ultimate job. That is, you meet people at their most vulnerable when you're dealing with someone's children. And I think it's similar in what we do with this family business model has the same sort of feelings. And it's really interesting to take those experiences and be able to apply them.
And family, it's something that is hugely important to you. And how has having had a family helped shape your decision making throughout your career?
I think it changes you. What I remember when I went in, and this will seem like ancient history to you young people. I went in to work, and I was expecting my first child, and I was going to tell them. I was going to tell them that I was expecting my first child, and I went in. I told them I was expecting my first child, and I would be going off, and she was going to be due at Christmas, and we would let them know, and they can make plans and whatever. And at the time, I think maternity leave was, I can't remember, 6 months or something. It was really not great. And I thought, right, well, we'll see how we do, we could probably manage to not go back to work, but we'll see. And I heard from my work colleague that the person who I'd told had turned around to her, who was a year older and equally likely to have babies, and said, "Oh, well, that's the last we'll see of her." And I thought, I could take that. I was raging at the time, I remember, because I was a St. George's girl, Hannah, and I was an empowered woman, and I was raging. And I thought, well, I can take that and I can be raging, and I can come back to spite them, to show him I can do this. Or I can do what I want to do. And what I wanted to do was stay at home and have my child. And I did. And I very quickly had another one, rashly, 17 months between them. But that is a big lesson. Do what suits you. Don't do what other people have to, you don't all have to fit the mold, and you don't have to prove to other people. You only have to prove to yourself.
I think it's even more difficult now, I think, for women in terms of society's expectations and this idea of a mould, because on one hand, you are expected to have children as a woman. And on the other hand, you are criticised for having children because of the impact it potentially has on your career. There just doesn't seem to be a right answer in all of this. You're vindicated either way.
Yeah, I think that's true. And having 3 daughters who one just got married and no doubt, well, hopefully at some point, some of them might have babies. I look at them and think, yeah, it's hard because, and I sometimes look at women of my generation who see that I had 10 years out. and came back and have still managed to scrape my way up that pole, I think they sometimes a little bit of resentment creeps in. And I think, well, do you know, I made my choices, and sometimes it's just luck, but sometimes if you're true to yourself and you actually do what's right for you, you don't go wrong.
There may be an element of luck in there, but my God, there's an element of sheer and utter hard work in
Determination. I think yeah, determination is absolutely essential. It's drive, and if you are, people are wired differently. People all have different ways to get to wherever they're going. It's the old graphic of success doesn't go in a line; it goes in lots of loops and curls and backs and forwards. That's real, and also, how do you measure success? To some people, success is just doing what they do. It's fine, and that's absolutely great. And to me, what's success to me? I don't know. Still being here. It's difficult. Everybody has different measures, and as long as I think happiness is probably success.
Is that something you've instilled in your daughters as well?
I hope so. You don't know, yeah, I mean, they're pretty happy people, I think, on the whole. Joanna's off today doing the Catamaran Yomp. She won't be very happy tonight. But
That's quite an undertaking.
38 miles she's doing today, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that on LinkedIn this morning, and I thought, oh, yeah, I think I'd rather be recording a podcast this morning. Like, that's much rather what I would do.
Yeah, she left Edinburgh, I think, at 5 this morning, and somewhere on a hill somewhere at the moment.
So, Linda, I think we talk a lot on this podcast about challenges, and I really liked when we sent you your notes in advance and we asked you kind of what's your biggest challenge, and you just said, I'm not sure there's one in particular. There's been so many. What would you, I guess, maybe rather than sharing specific challenges, but what would your kind of advice be around challenges, or what would you say to somebody about challenges?
Challenges are hurdles. They're not walls. And I feel a bit like the Gruffaloers. It was a Gruffalo, you can't go over it. The bear hunt. I'm going on a bear hunt. You don't go over it. You don't go under it. You don't go around it. And you will find a way. And sometimes challenges are not surmountable. Sometimes you just have to walk away, and that's been probably a really important thing, to know when to walk away. My kids and all my friends will know that I'm a bit of a music fan. All kinds, but particularly country. And there's a great, know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run. You sometimes just have to go, nah, that's not for me. But sometimes you have to power on, shoulder in. And I think the other quote I used was a Fred Astaire song that is, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. Because that's life. And you can't have the good without the bad. You can't have the yin without yang. You have to just ride the wave.
Would you say, Linda, there's been any particular kind of challenges that have maybe early in your career or anything that have really shaped how you do what you do now and why you do what you do now?
When you're 29 and you're pregnant, you're having your first child, and you basically, I got married at 26, quite early, really, nowadays. But you were basically like, well, she got married, so phew, life goes past now. You're not going to get up the ladder. You're not. And that's just the way it is. You're going to sit there. And some people are okay with that. That's fine. They just want to do their job. I didn't love my job enough. I did not love it. I love what I do now, but I didn't love what I did then. And I did. The other thing is, as you change and get older and whatever, your skill sets change, so you can do other jobs and do other aspects of jobs. So you do get more opportunity. But in terms of sort of, was there a specific key moment? It was probably that moment when I was basically heard back that I wouldn't go back to work. And I thought, and at university, actually, I remember first year of university, I was very social. And I managed to fail 3 of 4 of my courses. quite spectacularly. And I was called in to see my advisor of studies, and he sat there and he said, "Well, this is dire. You know, you're not going to pass the research. This is dire." And I went, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "So here's some arts faculty application forms. Why don't you just do some arts?" And I took them and I looked at him and I said, "No, I'll pass the research." And he said, "Well, you maybe should hedge your bets." And I went, and that was a seminal moment. I walked out and I did not fail an exam again. So I'm what you call an interpressure person. So if you know horses, you know interpressure horses. There's some that you push and they push back. I do that. You push me, I push back. So they're very life affirming, if you like, moments for me. If someone pushes me back and says you can't do it, I'll do it.
Yeah. And do you think, Linda, things like the way you were kind of viewed when you announced you were having a baby at 29 and how that affected your career, do you think that affects how you manage people and interact with colleagues today?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I have a team of um law at the moment is there are many more women anyway, so it's great. Um, but I certainly would never say you can't come and work for me because you're having babies, and I would never think, oh, I've hired someone, crikey, they're 30 and they're going to have babies. I would think that. I know that they probably will. Good on them. Hopefully they do. But I certainly would be always trying to make it as easy. And actually, I've had some frank conversations with one of my associates. Actually, left to go and be a full-time mum, two little boys, and we had that conversation and said, "Look, this is not forever. Go and really enjoy this portion of your life. You will never get it back. In 10 years' time, or 5 years' time, or 3 years' time, if you're bored, come back to me. Come and ask me. I want to come back." I was given that opportunity, and it was fantastic to go back. But take this time and love it, because it's the best. It's the best 10 years of my life.
Interesting. And I think that's really important in professional services, that there are people kind of advocating for that, because it won't be for everyone, but it will be for some people, and having somebody there who's advocating that, go and take your maternity leave, go and take time off, but come back. We know what you're capable of. Just because you've had a break doesn't mean that you're not. I think that's really, really valuable.
Yeah, and I'm very, very passionate about helping women, young women. I think it's really important. I think that it's still a sexist world. I think I said in my notes, Hannah, I had to look up gender equity. It's not a thing where I come from, where my growing up, but I want it to be for everyone. And I think lots of things are changing. Lots of things are changing for the good. Lots of my kids are, particularly in my younger two, are very woke. They know what's happening. They keep their mother woke and up. And yeah, and for example, I think until parental leave is equal, we will not get gender equity. Parental leave, I think, is what it should be called. I think parental leave should almost be, compulsorily equal. You can't do that, of course, but it is because I wouldn't have ever given up my firstborn to my husband to look after. but it is something that the workplace has to consider, and it is happening. It is changing.
You are seeing more and more kind of dads be off for 6 months or 3 months or whatever. I do think we are seeing more of it.
Yeah. But then is that counter to a woman's right to have that time, especially with their child? There's so many different facets of this, and you see what is happening on social media, and J.K. Rowling and the attitudes to her attitudes, and you think, that's one of the things I think is quite sad at the moment, is that people are not entitled to their own opinion. And it is really important that I think we still say, I believe this and I can do it. And, I think that's one of the things that's slightly toxic about this new way of always having to be the correct way. There is no correct way. There's lots of ways.
Yeah. And I think, part of that is kind of, all that chimes into kind of why Charlotte and I want to do a podcast like this. Why you, Linda, will advocate for kind of women in your team and support next generation of women coming through, and all those things kind of come together. And it's about all kind of being there to listen and support each other and kind of give the opportunity for people to share their opinions, but kind of allow people space to do what's right for them.
Yeah, and I think women. I think about women in agriculture, women in wellies, women in this, women in that, and I think, have we moved past that? Should we stop doing this? Because we shouldn't have to still be women in wellies, but we haven't really moved past it yet. We're not there yet, and I am a bit of a women in agriculture. Not sure about that. Not sure about that. People in agriculture, people. And I think we're nearly there. I think we are nearly there, people in agriculture. But it's still a struggle. But it's a struggle. We're winning. So keep going.
Linda, I'm not sure if I've ever told you this, but you are actually one of the people that I look up to most within the rural sector. And I love how you champion the next generation and the support that you've given to, to women in particular, and particularly women that have worked for you and worked with you. We always end the podcast by asking our guests, what's the one piece of advice you would give to the next generation of rural women in Scotland? But given what we've just talked about, perhaps it's rural people in Scotland.
Yeah, I think it is rural people in Scotland, because we can't, women in agricultural rural communities need, we need each other. There's a synergy. There's a yin and a yang. We can't all do everything. And I think women in agriculture, women in rural life have always had an extremely important role. It has been a culture that has not allowed that to show. We're 100 years back. It was a different landscape because people had babies all the time and they didn't have physical attributes to, for example, physically work in the same way as a man could. This has changed. I think women in agriculture, women in rural world, it is a different environment, and it is people now. There's automation. There's lots of ways we can still do the same jobs as each other. But in terms of advice, just do it. Don't take no for an answer. And also, there's never a right time. You don't know when the right time is. You just keep going and you will find the right time. You will hit the sweet spot. It's a sporting analogy. When you hit that hockey ball and it hits the sweet spot, it's hit the sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's never too late.
It's never too late. It's never too late. I am not young. I won't tell you how old I am. Oh, well, I'm 58. And I'm starting afresh now in a new role, in a new company, in a new way, with a new team. And people, I think, thought I was mad. But I'm ready for it. I'm up for it. Now's the time.
Very inspiring, Linda. The move that you've made and what you're doing and what you're achieving at the moment is just absolutely phenomenal. Obviously inspires Hannah and I, but will inspire a lot of other people as well.
Thank you, Charlotte. It's a real honour to be told that by you, because that's the other thing. You look at your own life from your own perspective. You don't see it through other people's lenses. And it's and the other thing I was going to say, we've got to big each other up. I think women are terrible at bigging each other up. There is a toxic masculinity culture where we don't, and we must do that. And that's really great while you're doing your podcast. I think it's brilliant. Well done.
Oh, thank you very much. We are very much of the view that, collaboration as opposed to competition. Obviously, you can have some healthy competition, but, we all succeed more if we work together and support each other. And that's, obviously been a key objective of the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda, for joining us today and sharing stories, experiences, and some fantastic lessons with our listeners.
You're welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And if anyone would like to connect with Linda on social media, you'll find details in the show notes. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on Instagram at Women in Wellies Podcast to stay up to date with all the latest news.
And you can email us with any questions on womeninwelliespodcast@gmail.com, and we'd love it if you could leave us a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Until next time.